But we hear, oh, my data is in terrible shape. I can't really begin this journey of AI, which we want to stand up and say pretty loudly, not true. And in fact, AI is really well suited to support that, and help in transitioning. You don't have to have perfect data in order to create valuable solutions that customers can benefit from.
Outwitting complexity starts here. Welcome to the GuideLine.
John, welcome to GuideLine. I'm glad to have you here. Really excited about this conversation. I think it's very relevant with our clients. You bring a really deep perspective on tech, data management, AI innovation. You've been around the business like I have for a while. So before we get into all the questions, let me start with you. Can you walk through a little bit of your background and your current role at Databricks and sort of where you see Databricks fitting in there?
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. So happy to be on GuideLine. Happy to be here with you. I'm just under 5 years at Databricks. I lead a team in field engineering globally that works with all of our system integration partners, and those could be the very large, that you might all hear and be familiar with Accenture, Deloitte, all the way to the smallest one or two person shops who just love Databricks and are working to, build AI data and AI solutions with customers. Prior to joining Databricks, I ran the data science and machine learning practice for Hitachi. So have had large teams building data science and machine learning solutions over the past decade or so, focused on Databricks.
Great. I'm going to pull those threads later because that history of data science and to where we are now in generative is a fun one because I think it's been an interesting conflagration of the two worlds coming together. But let's start with Databricks a little bit. So some people may not be aware of Databricks' what the breadth and depth is. Obviously, everybody knows the big hyperscalers. They've maybe heard of Databricks, they've heard of Snowflake and others, right? But can you give a little bit of overview of Databricks as a company, as a platform, and sort of how you talk to clients and partners about why Databricks?
Yeah, so I've been with Data. So Databricks started about 15 years ago, out of a lab in Berkeley. A team of founders were working on a research project around high volume, high velocity data processing, and they created Spark, which is a very high throughput data processing engine. They open sourced that, and then they built a platform around that, and that was kind of the genesis of Databricks. Thinking, hey, there's got to be a better way to, in this world of machine learning and AI, to process data more cost effectively, and that kind of initiated or instantiated Databricks. A few years later, we recognized that data warehouses were good for some things, and data lakes were what most data science and machine learning used and leveraged. So, but the two of those lived in sort of different worlds, and we innovated a lot to try to bring those together into this category of the lakehouse, which back in 2019, 2020 was sort of this, no one thought this was a legit thing. Turns out it is, and now everyone, hyperscalers, other data platforms are really understanding the value of lakehouse, which brings the best of data warehousing with the best of data lakes, and allows for all of those AI and machine learning, as well as the more traditional data warehousing functions to happen. So we're now kind of at the sort of foundation of AI. We've been an innovator in data, and we believe, with our kind of open platform, that we're well positioned to support generative AI and the advances that come with the AI world.
Yeah, definitely. It is a very interesting and forward-thinking journey that Databricks has been on in getting ahead of the game back in the as you said in the lakehouse days. I think back in those days, people were like, "Well, I have the data warehouse. Why do we need a lake house? Why do we need a data lake?" And we started. I remember saying to people like, "The data warehouses are going to go away," and they're like, "No, they can't spend millions and millions of dollars on these things." Yeah, but they're basically like putting things in the attic. You don't know where it is. You don't really go at it. You don't use it. And if you really think about how the business operates, if you've got trapped value in your organization you can't access, then is the data is it really valuable? And as we've seen the unlock from I think generative, and now I think the push towards AI, what we're seeing with data is the data is the fuel of the organization. And I think companies are starting to realize that. So I want to pull that thread a little bit here and talk about where you've seen the innovative companies and what the challenges are, those that have been resisting. But in that, I think it's as we think about the challenges of the data, one of the things you talked about was open, right? So open source and open data. I think where I see things going, especially with the rise of things like OpenClaw and Hermes and other stuff, really sort of the resident intelligence inside my organization, which Microsoft's now adopted with Scout and others. Data residency, the situ of that data matters. So, how does when you think about the data advice that you're giving clients, and we go together to have those conversations? What is the recommendation out there if you're a CIO, CTO, great, but even more so a CEO, a CMO, CFO around look, understanding to think about this data differently and understand where the world is going from a data sovereignty perspective. Love to get your and Databricks thought on it.
Yeah, I think, look, all companies have always talked about the importance of securing data and governing data and controlling data. Very few companies do it well. I think as a data scientist, there was like this sort of foundation of every good solution it required three things: data, an algorithm, sort of like the creativity of an algorithm, and feature engineering. So not just the raw data, you're always doing something with that data. And those three things, like data within the enterprise, is super valuable. And most companies don't really recognize that. They have ambitions about monetizing data, their data, but the way they combine it, how they package it, and how they share it, choose to share it or choose to protect it, is really what differentiates what we see as companies who are who are benefiting from this age of AI, this transition into AI. It's those who are recognizing the value of their data and really getting thoughtful about how they curate and control, and then provide that choice to their customers.
Yeah, I think that's really insightful. I think because I think of data, and the interesting thing about it, like the problem is there's so much data in an organization, and when I think about the functions the businesses do, there's not many businesses that what they do is one of one, right? So whether it's meter to cash and utilities, or hire to retain, whatever it is, right? The processes are generally the same. It's the algorithm, to your point. And so there's sort of two things I want to ask here. Number one is I'd like to understand a little bit sort of the health of the data, because everybody talks about, well, my data is not clean enough or whatever, and I don't think anybody's going to have perfectly clean data. So I'd love to understand a little bit. When you're talking to clients about the validity and health of their data, how we have that conversation. And the last piece is how do you segment or tier that data? Because the reality is I worked a long time in utilities practice, right? So like the meter to cash is meter to cash. Everybody reads a meter, everybody sends a bill, everybody gets cash in. How you apply the processes on top of it is the unique sauce. So how do you then tier that logic to say, look, the data that we really need to retain and replicate and put across the intelligence and give the tokens is not everything below the waterline, it's the stuff above the waterline. So is that a conversation you have with clients, especially as data scientists? And then the validity of that data and the health of that data, how do you guide a client to say, you can't wait till it's perfect, but how does Databricks and how do you look at that and help them take that journey?
Good question. So one of the things that we hear a lot is my data's, yes, data's in silos. That is not unique.
Shocking.
But yeah, right. But we hear, oh, my data is in terrible shape. I can't really begin this journey of AI, which we want to stand up and say pretty loudly, not true. And in fact, AI is really well suited to support that,
Right.
and help in transitioning. You don't have to have perfect data in order to create valuable solutions that customers can benefit from. It like that's just a fact.
Yep.
And AI can support filling in the gaps, the quality gaps, identifying the ones that are important to identify and segregate, or segment, decide what you need to do and prioritize those systems that need to get either migrated away from because they're not supporting the long term for you, or you resolve some of the quality issues and find out where that source is, and also move forward and build something valuable. I think as it relates to how do you tier and or how our customers are tiering, there's a few things that are emerging, and it has to do with like how to find and identify the productivity gains or the productivity opportunities from AI. And that is right. We got all these build tools. You can build better PowerPoints. You can build cooler images to put in those PowerPoints. You can summarize a lot faster. There's a lot of activity and personal productivity, which is cool and it's great, but that's not going to drive enterprise value, generally speaking. What we do see is kind of along three lanes. We see kind of the end-to-end revenue, the if you will, pre-sales, get us to sale, so revenue per employee. And then what is it that we're doing from lifetime value or customer lifecycle management? Once we have the customer, how do we manage that customer for its lifetime? And we start to introduce along the sort of horizontal across both of those, this notion of operational simulation, which in you mentioned energy,
Mhm.
certainly in manufacturing we see this, the notion of digital twins,
Yep.
operational twins. It is very easy for these tools to create simulations that approximate right either side of that, of that revenue, get to customer, keep the customer. And so creating operational simulations really allows the companies to focus where they should apply and go after data, and it also informs what data sources are viable within your enterprise.
I think it's great. I mean, and the digital twin example is great one because I did a lot in manufacturing in the early days of digital twins, and it was such a boon to them. There were always challenges with plant managers and operators, and can't shut things
Yeah,
down. But
yeah.
getting to that point where you could say, can we get 5%, 2%, and then when the efficiency gains were small but actually big for, especially on the maintenance side of the equipment. And there's no reason you can't apply it. Thanks to your point, the same analogy to an enterprise function and to the goal of the enterprise as a whole, and breaking out the silos. And it's interesting. One of the lines I used to use with boards when I'd be talking about AI, this back in 2022, 23, I'd be in front of boards of directors and they'd say, well, my CIO tells me our data is bad, so we can't take advantage of this. I'm like, great. So you're making decisions with bad data today and you don't know it. And the bad data is still there. And it's
Right.
in a silo. So where it's being applied may not have the context of the data being bad. So the whole idea in my mind of putting in a platform and an approach like Databricks and you guys are talking about is it gets to the people who understand the context of how that data is being applied and used and goes, something's not right. And I think we need to go look at it, and it allows them to focus very quickly, almost like a smoke tower in a forestry setting, to say this is where we need to go. Because if not, to your point, it is this massive jumble of, especially these big organizations, legacy tech, legacy databases, some of which may be in mainframes, some of which may be in yes, CLI based systems. You've got all these different. Where do I look? Where did it fall apart on the journey? And a lot of the times in the past, we would spend a ton of time and money and effort to refactor that data and whatever. But now I think with AI, and love to get your thoughts, is we can surround it. We can surround that legacy data and have it be part of the intelligence layer without really messing with the source system if we don't want to.
I totally agree with that. So a couple of things that you've said there triggered a thought, right? One thing that we see right within Databricks, we've been consuming these tools, we our own tools as well as some of the the frontier tools, and helping us build, right. So we have initial initiatives internally, Databricks, we call it Databricks on Databricks, right? It's like, how do you drive AI transformation using Databricks as the platform
Mhm.
within Databricks,
Yeah.
right? And I think one thing that we observe is these tools allow you to create net new very quickly. So if we thought there was technical debt before in an organization, the amount of technical debt that can be accumulated, virtually, literally overnight, is kind of astounding. And so that's one thing that we really drove a lot in our internal transformations using Databricks, using our governance tools. We get to see all of the build that's happening, and we also get to insight into how the teams are functioning. Like, are you just building something over the weekend that you want to post in on YouTube and say, hey, look what I hacked together? Or is this really driving some kind of enterprise value, and efficiency? And so Databricks on Databricks has like informed us in some of the cautions of building new technical debt, and also kind of cemented the importance of governing and controlling all of those data and AI assets. So it's a whirlwind. We're still learning a lot every day.
Well, I think everybody is. Yeah, everybody's building stuff, right? Everybody's because it's like when we first got PowerPoint and we got fonts. Everybody used every font, right? And
So,
I'm that old, so So, but everyone
that's
used everything they have, right? And it's sort of saying, I mean, I develop stuff all the time with my bots, and I'm like, did I really have to develop that? I mean, I probably could have found something if it would have been simpler, but the idea is like it's so much fun to do. But I like the idea of looking at the measurement of personal productivity or individual or even one-off versus is there enterprise value in what we've created? And if there is, how do we tap that into the broader construct to get across? Because I think we're going to see more and more personal agents. I've always said, like, there's going to be a stew bot that I take with me when I go to other companies. Like, there's a personality that I have that knows how I work and operate and how I like to interact. And then there's the role that I step into. I should step into a role with a level of intelligence that company deems appropriate for that role. So if I'm head of technology, if I come in to be the CTO of Databricks, I should walk into an intelligence layer that when I get emails, pings, whatever, I'm getting context with that from how the company has decided this role operates in the past. Now I get to shape it a little bit and what I bring to the table, but having that organizational intelligence stay inside in that algorithm like you talked about is really important. And this is, I think, the promise of where data science wanted to be 15, 20 years ago, but frankly, it was a really heavy lift.
I think your concept of personalization, right? Agent personalization is super important. It's what we start to get. We immediately recognize when we're interacting with our data and through an agent is whether they are in tune with us or whether they are sort of like, whoop, wait, what's happening here? You just got lazy or you went off the rails. We sort of have a sense, which is why it's super important as you talk about any of these business processes, why human in the loop is so critical to the transformation. You can't just say agents communicate with other agents all the way through. We're not at that place yet. We need humans in the loop, both in design and observation. And that, I think, design, and it's just a quick side, I think design is really the next sort of anchor of like, what are these systems like? How are they good? How are they bad? Design of the systems, design of workflows is a critical skill. And the concept of jobs going away, I think they're shifting for sure,
Agreed.
and shifting to need more and better design,
Yeah, I couldn't
because the
agree more.
scale is staggering, right? It's like kind of like hard to get your head around how fast and how many things can be, operating at the same time, and just to be, more thoughtful in design, and control of that is super critical.
I love that, and I could not agree more. I think the shifting of jobs, and I think everyone's starting to realize it's not a net reduction, but it is a shifting. I think that's the right way to put it. And I think the more context and content you have in your field, the more valuable you're going to become, because it's going to require that. I like the idea of the design. I mean, we've been thinking about this and go to clients and we talk to them about our construct of how you look at regulated industries and what you should be looking at. And I'm trying to go in and talk 1, 3, 5 years out, even though we're designing for today. What I don't want to have happen, you and I, we've been through the cloud journeys, we've been through the data warehouse journeys, we've been through the, back in the day, the middleware journeys and all the other stuff. And I want, like, what we know where this is headed. This is going to head to the idea that the data is going to dictate the software, and the software generally is going to be built by us. It doesn't mean we're not going to have software companies that we leverage, but odds are, personal opinion, we're going to be leveraging their data models more than anything else. And those data models are very valuable to them, and they need to monetize them.
Yeah.
I think some of them are, and some of them are not. And those that don't, I think will have a very hard road ahead. But I think the idea of, okay, I want to build what my CRM looks like. I want to build what my ERP looks like, and it's going to be based on this
Yeah.
process, not on this system. I don't need to buy all the other junk. And so I think the data becomes very critical, and then how you structure that data. I use the term fungible all the time. I want my architectures to be as fungible as possible for all the innovation that's going to be coming over the next, 12 to 36 months. And I will be vehemently annoying to a client if I find them going down a path that is going to be restricting them. And even if they're like religious argument, I'll be like, look, I'm going to keep warning you. You get to make the final call. You're the client, but like, what you're about to do is going to lock you into something that you don't want to be locked into. We've gotten away from that mostly. I mean, we got away from the hardware lock-ins and everything else. Now, having said that, I may flip back and say, hey, I believe this data needs to be on premise, right? As opposed to, I would have said all the data needs to be on cloud in the past. I'm going to say, look, there needs to be some stuff here and some stuff there, especially in my industries. But you may use this hyperscaler today. The next one, it might be an XAI. It might be we don't know who the next ones are going to be, and you've got to be able to take advantage of that quickly to stay ahead of your competition, no matter what that competition is. Even if you're a regulated rate, an agency, I want to make sure that I'm getting the best intelligence I can. So I agree with you. I think that the idea of the role of the individual in the organization becomes more valuable, but it does require change, adoption in an organization that is tough. I did. Let me get your thought on this, because I was in front of a lot of CEOs and I said, look, the biggest challenge of AI is not going to be the tech, it's going to be the change in the organization. And I said, it's the biggest change to hit a company since Y2K. It's bigger than COVID, because we're about to hit a COVID moment where those
For sure.
in my mind, the COVID moment was, if you weren't remote work enabled, you got smacked in the face really hard and had like weeks to catch up, which was obviously very profitable for the SIs, right? I think we're in the same thing in AI. If you've been dragging your feet and you don't even have a data lake, you're still sitting on a data warehouse. You can't take advantage of all of this, and you're going to have to do either quickly or you're going to be in deep trouble. I think that same thing exists. So if there are executives out there listening to this, or regulators, agencies, if you don't have a data lake, if you're not looking at a data lake house, if you're not thinking about this right now, if you don't have a strategy, at least, you're behind, right? You're behind, and it's going to cost you more money to catch up.
Yeah, I think I would add one piece to that. I would say, look, you're behind and you are advantaged because you can skip the line.
Correct. Agreed.
Right.
Agreed.
You can, please do not just keep waiting, because it's not going to settle anytime soon. And you could literally be out of business before and you won't see it coming. There are things that are happening so fast that one day you think you're cruising, and the next you're in deep trouble.
Yeah.
Because you just got ate by software. The good news is you can skip the line. To your point, like skip the line to open, to not be locked in. Infrastructure plus software, which is really your previous choices. It's like pick this cloud,
Right.
pick that cloud, and you're stuck into the whole stack. That is not the case anymore. Databricks is a perfect example. We run on all clouds.
Yep.
We have the software, and we can consume all models, like all through this. And we're not charging customers for that access, for that control. We're saying, look, the control should sit with you for your data, for your AI. So grab it, come with us, skip the line, jump in, grab it, take control, start building things of value that drive, customer engagement, that drive top line revenue and operational efficiency, with your own data. Because
Yeah.
with your own data is the unique value prop that you come to the table with. So I think you're spot on with that, Stuart.
I love the point around you can skip the line. I mean, I had this when I was running a big cloud practice in another place, right? I mean, it was especially in the oil and gas energy space, right? They were the last to go, and it was interesting. The very last to go in the cloud space were healthcare and financial services. Like they were kicking and screaming, we can't do this regulatory, PII, HIPAA, whatever. First to go to AI, right? And I think because they were so regulated process, they were able to take advantage early on because they were
Yeah.
so process oriented. But it does get to that point of you can skip the line and you should be doing it. And so I say that a lot, especially when you can imagine I'm talking to government agencies. I'm like, hey, it's okay that you don't have all this other crap we got to unwind that you haven't already capitalized out. But in order to get this done, this is going to require organizational leadership. We're doing this. And so like in the federal government, I'm seeing that now. There's a big shift in obviously the technology organizations where there's a big push in a short amount of time to really, frankly, make up 20 years of non innovation, which is great. State and local, I haven't seen that at the same level yet that I'm seeing in the federal level. But I think the idea of saying, do you have the change agent in the organization and do you have the decision authority to make this happen? Because if you don't, even in a commercial organization, it's challenging. It's even more difficult in the governmental organization. But I agree with you. You can make leaps and bounds and not have to unwind. Look, the leading companies, they're fine unwinding spend. Banks, healthcare, these are companies that innovate on the edge all the time. So their idea of unwinding something they put in 2 or 3 years ago is not a big deal. It is a big deal when you're talking about taxpayer dollars or you're talking about regulated monopolistic industries that are regulated by the government who can't spend willy nilly on that, right?
Yeah, I love your point about change agent, right? And being that leader. Like one of the things that I look for when we are meeting with partners and customers is those inspirational people, right? Like I get it, right? Companies, people, right? It comes down to individuals, right? In their heart, like they've invested a lot in a company. They've put their careers on the line. They've made decisions that their careers rest on, right? We just sold this big thing to the board. We haven't reaped the value of it yet. If I come in and say, hey, we got to do something different, they're gonna like, I'm running a lot of risk. And what I would say to that is, you know, our the next generation is looking for inspiration
Yeah.
here. It's looking for inspiring leaders. And I think whether you've made a big commitment and submitted, a lot of personal chips on the table with your company, or you are looking for that opportunity, like be inspirational to the teams that are under, that are working with you and for you, and really embrace what's out there. I think because the change agent, is super critical to all of this. We can come in and say, hey, whether it's a forward deployed engineer or whatever the current term of your great builder is, we can build stuff. But change, like getting your org to change, is what's critical. And we need inspirational leaders as much as we need powerful technology.
Yeah, I agree. And I do the same thing. When I go in a room, my first thing is I'm like, are the people advocating for this? How long have they been enrolled? All right. And if they've been there 15, 20 years and, you know, is this, they finally feel like they've got the, like, I basically read them out. Are they here because finally someone listened to them and they get to do what they want to do and the others didn't? And is there a leader above them that says we're going this new direction? Or are they just checking the box? If they're just checking the box, I'm very much like, look, I I hear what you want to do, but unless you have this kind of authority, like unless you really want to get it done, you can't do these kind of things by committee, especially with the leapfrog like we talked about. Well, I think we're at the end, John. So I'm going to ask you the one question I ask everybody, which is, what's your guideline? So one final insight or piece of advice that you could leave our listeners with today around sort of what your guideline is and what they should be listening, what they should be thinking.
I sort of, so maybe I'll bring forward a couple of thoughts that we shared already, right? One is when you can skip the line, right? So I think that's an important thing, right? Don't feel like you are mired or locked into something. Like explore some of these leading technologies like Databricks and the innovations that come with Databricks or our platform or others. Like jump into this, jump ahead, and don't feel you're locked in. And I think anchor on the ability to control data and AI assets as you are building. Do that in a place that allows you this openness to pick infrastructure, to pick software, because that is going to allow you to go fast. The open technologies move faster than closed. The open enterprises move faster than closed. It's proven out, and that'd be my advice. Like just don't be afraid to go fast.
I love it. Skip the line and be open to open. I think that's the right way.
Be open to open. Yeah, right.
Love it.
With
John,
control.
All, thank you. I know you're on PTO today, so thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. I think it's a great conversation. I think people get a lot out of this. I think data is we used to talk about it as being sort of the brain. It's the brain and the heart of organizations now. It's more and more important that we get this right. John, thanks for your time. I appreciate it. Thanks for joining GuideLine. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Stuart. I really enjoyed this.
The GuideLine is a podcast brought to you by GuideHouse. For more episodes, click here or subscribe to our channel to stay up to date. To see more from GuideHouse, head to our website, guidehouse.com.